Hi, I'm Coleman from jaxinter.com, and I'm here at the W-JAX with our keynote speaker, Henk Kolk, who is a veteran CTO and also chief architect at ING Bank. So Henk, one of the things you were telling us about in your keynote was the agile transformation that ING went through in the past few years. Could you tell us a little bit perhaps about what kind of things have changed at the company there? From what I understand, it influenced well beyond the scope of IT at the bank. Be really interested to hear what you think.
Yeah, sure. So it has been a fantastic journey, really. Yeah. It's not like throwing a switch.
Right.
When some of my colleagues started experimenting with Agile, and they created their first successes, they also had to bend a lot of rules to be able to do that. And when they showed their success, and also when our CIO saw the energy in the teams, he really liked it. So what made it for us a big success is the support from the top down, as well as people in the teams really knowing what they wanted. And from that moment on, Agile spread almost like wildfire. Mm-hmm. We had teams that had nothing to do with software engineering adopting Scrum, just to see how it was. And then it became clear to us that we were going to hit new hurdles. In the beginning, if you're a management team trying to support your teams, they ask for, hey, we want big white walls. Okay, that can be arranged. Mm-hmm. And we want better yellow sticky notes because the ones that you bought, they drop down from the board after half a day. Okay, that can be arranged. Mm-hmm. Even though you already have to go against your procurement processes to do it. Hey, we want better machines. It's already a little bit harder. Mm-hmm. We want, because we're a bank, everything should be secure, or must be secure. And then you're going to hit the next hurdle. Hey, how are we going to govern so many teams that work in an agile way? Mm-hmm. And especially if increasingly vocal engineers start to try out new ways to tackle problems, for example, with open source tooling. And you have to help them embed that in the bank. So there you see this play in a positive way between senior management and software engineers with great ideas who just need help. And what we saw is that we hit hurdle after hurdle. Agile teams putting a lot of pressure on the operations guys. And we saw, hey, this is not going to work anymore. So we put the operations guys in the teams. And then we made the whole team responsible on call. Of course, this takes guts from senior management, and our senior management had that guts, so that was really cool. Mm-hmm. And what we did was really have a look outside the bank and have a look at how are Silicon Valley type firms solving problems that we currently have. And when I say journey, it's really about, hey, this works, and then immediately you discover, but now we're hitting a next wall or a next bottleneck that needs to be removed. Mm-hmm. Starting with tools that the teams want, right, and the yellow stickies, until, hey, we want complicated things like an integrated test environment that covers the whole bank. And I remember halfway this journey, we thought, oh, this is just too difficult what they ask from us. Mm. This is going to be very, very expensive. But today we're building all of that. So it has been a journey for managers and engineers to discover that all these hurdles that we take for granted can be resolved. Mm-hmm. And now our business colleagues have joined, so we don't end up in this kind of water scrum fall situation. Mm-hmm. They removed layers of management, and that's not without pain, you know. Great colleagues of us have left the bank because, if you just put one or two persons in DevOps teams, then the bank will also get smaller in terms of management. Mm-hmm. But the cool thing is now they can take decisions on their own based on data and feedback from our customers. So it's a journey of, hey, we think we're there, and then we hit a new wall.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So then there was another thing you were mentioning in the keynote. You brought us back to the year 1908, which is the year the Model T Ford came out, which is an interesting comparison because it represents this shift from building a product for one specific customer to the assembly line, where employees are focused on very specific tasks and I suppose ultimately lose touch with the customer and their point of view.
Exactly.
Do you think this is something that we're still suffering from? Are we still seeing the legacy of that loss of touch with the lack of direct communication with customers?
You hit the nail on the head there.
Okay.
And yes, I do.
Mm-hmm.
Software engineering does not function well in an assembly line way of thinking.
Mm-hmm.
You need great engineers who can not fulfill specific tasks, but all of them. You need engineers that empathize with what the customer really needs and want to understand how to remove friction from the perspective of the customer.
Mm-hmm.
Removing friction is what this whole customer experience wave that is hitting us today is about. So this is a very big change in terms of empowerment also, because one of the things I learned, and maybe this doesn't answer your question directly, but if you're the chief architect and you have 1,500 engineers in 400 teams together with the business, mm-hmm. then there's so much brain power there, almost like a supercomputer with 400 teams, almost 4,000 people, or maybe 3,000 people working in parallel, coming up with better ideas for our customer. So this whole idea of command and control that you as a boss or as an architect or as a manager can tell people what they should do is gone, right? And you see this enormous power coming from all these parallel brains. And you have to, or at least I think we have to learn how to enable them in the right way.
Speaking of enabling then, you mentioned that very important quote of software eating the world, that Marc Andreessen quote, during your keynote, and then asked how many developers in the audience were familiar with Andreessen and his ideas. But I think we were both surprised to see not that many hands going up. And you also mentioned to me before we started here that happens a lot of your keynotes, that not all software engineers will know that concept of software eating the world and that general trend. Do you see that as a problem at the moment?
Yes. Mm-hmm. It still astonishes me that in this era where software engineers can make all of the difference, they're not going out there and read the most important articles that would empower them to take ownership in their own companies. Mm-hmm. And as I told you before, I think today's firms really need this change. And therefore, software engineers have to embrace this change. Mm-hmm. And of course, it's not just software engineers. This is a dance with senior management. But if software engineers really get it and become vocal on this shift of thinking about what was the best practice in the assembly line world and what is the best practice now and how IT is making the change and the role of the software engineer in it, man, there is big salary change upgrades for them that I can see coming if they can make the difference. So this thing really bugs me a little bit. Mm-hmm. And why? Facebook owns like the web for the normal guy. Facebook and Google, Amazon and other companies start to own all the retail world and the retail selling stuff, right? They're the aggregators that can really own the customer relationship and can push all the suppliers in a submissive role. This is all coming at Europe. And where are we, right? Where are we? And what we need to do right now is really fix the profession of software engineers, fix how they look at themselves, fix how they look at the world. Europe needs it, right? My country, the Netherlands, needs it. Germany needs it. If software is really making that much of a difference, then we should make that shift of mind, that mind shift towards the new world.
Absolutely. Who needs to be doing the change then? Is it the employers or the employees themselves?
Both.
Great.
Both? Why not? It's not you that if you know how to make the change, that you have to wait for your boss to come up with the idea himself, right? Isn't the whole idea of agile that you talk with each other, that you say, hey, I have a fantastic idea, and I need you to listen for 15 minutes to really get it, right? That kind of eloquence must be expected from engineers these days, right? What's the right word? Assertiveness?
Absolutely, yeah. So you mentioned microservices a lot. That came up a huge amount in your keynote. I wouldn't mind asking you about what you think of Conways Law, which we hear quite a lot at the moment in that context. In other words, do you think the structure of a team absolutely needs to reflect how the system is built itself?
Yes and no. So let me start with the yes. Conways Law, just for everybody, means that the architecture of your system landscape will reflect at a certain point your organizational structure.
Right.
So if you think silos and you think, for example, multiple channels or multiple countries, you will end up with an architecture that reflects having different applications for different channels and for multiple countries. And that's a huge waste. And then you come to Conways Law, how to do this right. So one of the ways we are looking at it, hey, there is this API landscape, right, that exposes all these services to experienced tribes or squads. And they can do with it whatever they want. For them, this is, in a bank, just a banking OS operating system of RESTful APIs that they can consume. So that's one step of thinking that you have to make. Then secondly, hey, why would we have, 3 or 4 backend systems doing almost the same thing, and in our vision of the future, exposing almost the same APIs? Why would we have that? Why would we need that? And then you see almost how an emerging API landscape also reflects continuous redesign of your organization, or imposes continuous redesign of your organization. And that's a problem, because design today is emerging. And you don't want to put people endlessly through reorgs just because, hey, some chief architect had a new idea. Probably wouldn't just for that sake, but so we have to look at, hey, what are the mechanisms that make life a little bit easy for Scrum at scale. And one of the mechanisms is, hey, if I'm a front-end development team, right? I make an app for our customers, and I'm waiting for you to give me a next version of your RESTful API. If I have this wait time, why don't I help you? Why don't I do a pull request, check out your code, create what I need, check it in, make sure that it conforms to your coding standards and documentation standards or whatever you need. So there has to be some kind of oil in the system to make this work at scale. And these mechanisms where teams just start helping out each other, that's what you need to not get stuck if you have hundreds of teams.
Right. So finally then, I wouldn't mind asking you about the role of the CTO. I understand you're on a panel later at the conference discussing the importance of CTOs and what they mean for the company. Given your long history in that kind of a role, perhaps you could tell us what you think makes a good CTO.
Yeah, I want to start by saying that I might not be the best CTO. But there are people working in our company who have that kind of role. And what they do is amazing. They are so in touch with what is happening in the world. There's one guy that sends me so much stuff to read every weekend that I just don't have enough hours just to be in touch with everything what's going on, and to really understand the new paradigm that we're in. And I think that is the role of the CTO or chief architect or whatever. Chief engineer is a title that I would really like to have the next time. But because engineering shifts so much towards empathy and design. But also you have to understand the full thing. You have to understand infrastructure. You have to understand the domains that you're responsible for, the business domains. You have to understand how technology works. So all these things. But foremost, if your CTO is not in touch with what is happening in China, what is happening in Silicon Valley, then your whole company is in problems, in trouble.
Henk, thank you very much for your insights, and thank you all for watching.